Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dead Cells. Today we're going to be doing another run on the Alpha branch, this time focusing on brutality because I sort of glossed over it the first time. Granted, there weren't that many changes to a lot of the brutality weapons, but I completely glossed over and forgot about the fact that brutality actually did get a bunch of changes in the form of the damage over time reworks. And more specifically, what we're going to be following in this video is bleeding. Back in the day, and by back in the day I mean currently live on 1.8, bleeding, just like any other DOT, is just damage over time, ticking down slowly. But in the alpha, they recently they added this new mechanic where once bleed stacks up to 5, it'll instantly expend all of the bleed stacks, dealing all of the damage in one big burst, which is pretty nice for, you know, speeding up that DPS, getting it out there ASAP, instead of just waiting forever for it to tick down in longer fights. Now, this does mean that your bleed won't always bypass the damage cap, but in all honesty, it doesn't really matter that much. Because, you know, getting that damage out there faster, ends the fight faster, probably makes up for any kind of lower damage, or any kind of damage that you lose to the cap. And I should say that this is currently post-commentary, because I did this run back in the, well, a couple days ago, at this point. I don't have good recording conditions for audio right now, at least not consistently. So, just recording the footage when I had the chance, or I can record the footage whenever I'm recording the audio when I have the chance, which is right now. But yeah, I picked up the Blood Sword because one of the buffs to brutality items is Blood Sword now bleeds for longer. And since something bleeds for longer, that means it has more bleed DPS that you can burst at with the new changes to bleeding. Figured that'd make for a pretty interesting run, and you know, we'll see. Definitely not off to the greatest start right here, given how few stats we've got off in the beginning. Back in 1.8, 2 hits from that elite would put me at like 50% HP, not below 25, but you know, I welcome a little bit of extra challenge, I guess. At least for now. I assume they're gonna tweak stuff around and make it a little more, you know, a little less punishing, I guess. But it'll do for now. So right now, only got the Blood Sword for bleeding, but who knows? Could find a whole bunch of other bleed items in the future. Oh yeah, and I'm just looking around trying to get my Explorer's Rune to proc so I can make sure I'm not missing any scrolls. Especially when I'm unsure about like the number they're there, in case like they changed it but it's not in the patch notes or something. Because it was like a vague thing about like adding extra scrolls to areas to make up for the fact that you don't get that many right off the beginning. But I don't remember where those scrolls are exactly. Deciding not to take Corrupted Power, I'm pretty sure, because I feel like the burst from Infantry Grenade and Telluric Shock would be better. Infantry Grenade not so much, but also, you know, taking 30% extra damage when I have such reduced max HP doesn't feel like the smartest idea. Back in 1.8 I'll take Corrupted Power like every day though. We gotta adapt to the changes. Otherwise it's just 1.8 with different weapons. And then mechanics. Oh yeah, and we don't really get the chance to mess around with anything other than bleed in terms of DOT, or damage over time. But I can't explain the other ones that they did. Or the other reworks. Fire has stayed pretty much exactly the same, but now the synergy for it is 40% instead of 30, so yeah, it's Nice little buff. They added Shock, which I think I talked about in the last episode a little bit, but not really specifically. Shock is like a passive sort of DOT that you have on all these electric weapons, such as lightning bolts, such as, you know, electric whip, the magnetic grenade, wings of the crow right now. And it's damage over time, but it also like spreads to nearby enemies when a shocked enemy takes damage. So it's like AoE damage over time, but not in the same way that like a poison cloud would be. I think that's pretty cool. And speaking of poison also got a rework. And basically, if you remember bleed propagation from, like, or well, when an enemy dies from bleeding, it spreads to nearby enemies. It's basically that. Or like a corpse explosion, if you're more familiar with that concept from other games. And I think that's it. Unless I'm forgetting something. Nope, the poison, bleed, fire, shock. Yep. Oh, and I decided to go Frenzy right off the bat. Wasn't the best choice, but it's not a bad one either. It's pretty inconsequential. Always nice to start off with with a curse chest early on, especially because it gives me a little stat buffer that I really need early on in the game. But yeah, my idea behind Frenzy is just like, I'm low on HP, I need to heal up somewhat. Berserker's not going to do that much for me if I'm going to die even with damage reduction. Especially because the damage reduction scales off of the stat scrolls you have, and don't have many early. Frenzy, of course, isn't going to be doing that much because the Blood Sword's actual like damage per swing is pretty bad. Oh yeah, I was picking up the Spartan sandals because I wanted to see if they got changed at all. Their animations are perfectly the same. They just got a damage buff, I'm pretty sure, which is much appreciated. Might have to pick them up again. I'll check them out later. But for now, Blood Sword. So yeah, I just wanted to take Frenzy, get some healing. It doesn't really do that much because Blood Sword, most of its damage comes from the bleed, not the actual swing. But it'll do for now, just getting me a little bit of extra health as I rush through the early levels. Nice thing to have. I can't really think of anything else that I would have rather taken at that point, except maybe like disengagement if I wanted to be defensive. But I was already planning on incorporating open wounds into the deck. I mean, into the deck. What am I talking about? I've been thinking about Slay the Spire too much, I guess. Been relaxing with some chill games like that, the slower paced, big brain games. So I'm still kind of in that mindset. But yeah, I feel like I wanted to do open wounds because I want to get as much bleeding as possible to really see how far I can push the new like bleed burst mechanic. I don't really know what to call it. It's like bleed burst, blood explosion. You know, it needs like a catchy name. But that's something for another time. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. No ideas. But that's okay. But yeah, I didn't want to take disengagement because I was already planning on having like a very offensive, however you want to say it. I was planning on having an offensive mutation set as opposed to the defensive thing I would have taken, so I'm pretty sure no more, like, no disengagement, no masochist, I think. I'm not really sure. In hindsight, I should have though, because the standard melee mutations that I like taking, being, you know, Frenzy and Berserker, aren't really very effective in a build like this. Berserker, because, you know, you most of the time the enemy dies to bleeding, not your actual, like, sword hit. So, doesn't really proc that off. excuse me. But that's fine, it doesn't have to... Not every weapon has to be compatible with Berserker. Just because it's my favorite way to play, I guess. You barely notice it during this run, though. The malaise doesn't get up to a point where Berserker, like, would have made much of a difference, and, well, I don't know what I can say about damage reduction. Yeah, I'm digging Lacerating Aura, same as always. It did get kind of an indirect nerf, because, I don't know. You might have seen it in the patch notes already, maybe not. But skills no longer rally. And rally is like when you take damage, your HP turns orange and you can regenerate some of it by attacking enemies. Just to clarify. Yeah, so skills like Lacerating Aura used to be able to rally up all that HP super quickly, and now they just don't. So I testing out Thunder Shield, trying to see if it shocks enemies with the tickle, as I like to call it, but it doesn't look like it does. I'm pretty sure that it will inflict shock DPS if you reactivate it for, like, the parry effect, because, you know, when you parry something with lightning shields, Thunder Shield? Thunder Shield, that one. When you parry something with Thunder Shield, you gain static aura, parry again to push out the aura. Ooh, nice Bloodsword upgrade. Always good to get that ASAP. Yeah, you push out the lightning aura and then it stuns nearby enemies. I don't remember what affix I'm looking for here. I guess I wasn't looking for one. That's okay. Ah yes, the 27% damage reduction to Prison Depths. Might be helpful, maybe not. It all depends on if it actually procs or not. Yes, give me Cursed Chest. Ooh, the Throwing Knife. Now here's where things get spicy. Now generally, Blood Sword and Throwing Knife is, well, not really a combo I'd actually bother to go do normally. And here I get the brilliant idea to combine them both to the same button. I'm just kidding about it being a brilliant idea, though. Combining stuff to the same button is just an easy way to get, like, maximum DPS when you've got fast attacking weapons. Like, two that you can get together, so like Throwing Knives and Assassin's Dagger. Or not Assassin's Dagger, the Sata Stiletto. Stuff like that just works really well together. Because you don't have to keep clicking both buttons, just click one. And there's like pretty much never a time where you wouldn't want to be chucking out the Throwing Knives like ASAP, or as much as possible, not as fast as possible. Well, also as fast as possible, but I see there's a really nice bleed burst on that hammer right there. Just popped him super fast. This is where it really starts to show, like, the... Because now we can actually stack bleed fast enough to have it explode like that. Culminate in the big burst. Definitely significantly increases your DPS by, you know, ending the fight a little faster. Just kaboom! Blood everywhere. And right now I have it so the Blood Sword is in the first spot and the Throwing Knives are in the second spot. But I should actually have it the other way around, because I don't know if this is just like a placebo sort of thing, or maybe not placebo, but like a misconception on my part, something that feels accurate but isn't. But I feel like it, even when you have them bound to the same weapon, it prioritizes the weapon in the first slot, and there's the cleaver for even more bleeding. At this point, we've got pretty much all the bleed we can get without a sinew slicer. but that's off color, so not really worth considering the bleed damage actually still matters. Also, you know, Frenzy is putting in work, even if it's not as high as it would be with another weapon. So that is not a take I regret. Berserker, on the other hand, I feel like we could have totally done without in this build. I shouldn't be so reliant on Berserker for malaise reduction. Oof, that's not what you want to see. Definitely got to be careful with the lacerators, especially when you don't have disengagement, because you can super easily get stuck in a combo like that and just get completely wrecked. But yeah, since it consumes all the bleed stacks when you hit 5 to do extra damage, or to do the damage more quickly, it does matter how much bleed you actually, or how much damage the bleed is doing. It's not just a matter of like taking an off-color sinew slicer so that you get the bleed procs more often. It's generally not going to be that worth if the bleed itself isn't very strong. Having like a lacerating aura with bleed synergy is going to drastically increase your DPS by comparison. Even though, like... Well, I was gonna say even though bleed synergy isn't the highest at only 60%, but 60% is still like a pretty big damage buff. It just doesn't really seem like it because of, you know, there used to be two 100%. Oh yeah, they lowered poison damage synergy down to 80% instead of 100%, which I'm totally fine with, because poison is way easier to get than burning oil synergy most of the time. Unless you got Flamethrower Turret. But they also nerfed Flamethrower Turret by making the cooldown longer, so you can't reapply Burning Oil as often. So, you know, it balances out. Makes it a little harder to get, so it might as well be worth the 100. And yeah, so 60 is less than 100, but it's still pretty darn good. Definitely worth, you know, re-rolling it and speccing out for. Especially because, you know, the rerolls are sort of cheaper by comparison now, just because everything isn't so ludicrously expensive and exponentially scaling. Thank you for condensing the economy. Oh yeah, here's where I decided to test it out, like the difference between it. And you basically just get like an extra throwing knife in, because you can check out the throwing knife and immediately go into the swing, and then, you know, go for that sort of rhythm to it. And we got 10 brutality heading into the ossuary, which is really, really not great. Well, it feels like it's really, really not great just because of, you know, what we're used to with 1.8. But from my experience with these runs, having like leaving the ossuary with like 14 is pretty on par for the new alpha, which is kind of I never thought I'd be hearing myself say that 14 heading into the concierge fight is good. I mean, it's not good, but it's all I can get, especially if I'm going to be getting these guardian scrolls all the time. But given how low my HP is due to the low stats pool, not low stats pool. I could use a little extra points in health. Keep me alive. It would be a good idea to not perish immediately at the slightest hurdle, especially if I'm not running disengagement or mass, I guess. I don't remember if I probably like pivot onto Masochist later, or disengagement, just because, like, you know, it's good to, when you get in the later stages, it's good to have that resistance. And by resistance I mean like the defensive stuff, because you can do all the damage in the world, but it's not going to matter when you're dead. Is basically the justification behind it. Especially because the the mutations I had before, I have right now are all defensive except for open wounds anyway. So, would just be better and more effective defense, kind of. Yeah, Frenzy is still putting in work, even if it's not that much. It's like nice passive health regen basically, because I almost always have a speed buff trying to get through these levels pretty quickly. I'm not aiming for time doors or anything. The entire reason I try to go quickly through the levels, aside from the fact that I'm just trying to make things more efficient, because I've played the game so much and experienced all this before, so I want to get to the good stuff ASAP, basically. Because I'm trying to make the video shorter so it can be more entertaining. Because the longer the video goes on for, the more likely I am to run out of stuff to talk about and start drawing blanks. When I start drawing blanks, then, it's not gonna be conducive to consistent commentary and such. Which I'd like to be as consistent as possible with my commentary, providing a somewhat professional viewing experience, even though I do not have the necessary experience to provide such an experience, I guess. I don't know. Still relatively new to this whole video YouTube thing. Oh yeah, and I was trying to chase this guy down so I could get the Berserker proc and consume that thing or the croissant without getting Malaise, but he died to bleeding instead of my sword swing. Or maybe he died to my throwing knife, which comes out before the sword swing. Either way, no croissant for me. But that's fine. 15% HP is good, but not necessary. Or not something I can't live without, I guess. Though that's a double negative, I think. But yeah, if you want to try this build for yourself, I recommend skipping over Berserker, taking some kind of defensive like disengagement, since you're not going to have a shield, meaning you're more likely to get caught in a situation where you might get bursted down without that little without those iframes that the shield gives. Although it's not really iframes, it's a half-second invulnerability barrier that protects you from taking damage when you've been hit and you're carrying a shield. Helpful little passive if you, for those out there who don't know about it. It's just like an extra added incentive to take shields. Which I do like shields, I really do, but I'm trying to branch out into like these, well, maybe not so much these like two weapons bound to the same button for maximum effect sort of things. Although the next video that I'm gonna be putting out does have that. It's mostly just that I'm trying to play without shields so I don't feel so dependent on them, and so I can like dodge better instead of just relying on parrying everything. Because parry timings, they sometimes suffer. Excuse me. Ugh, I'm gonna have to go through this video and edit out all my coughing and stuff. It's gonna be annoying. But that's okay. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, wait. When I said that I was heading into the concierge fight with 14 14 brutality, I was wrong. It's 13. Oh boy. What am I gonna talk about for the entire duration of this concierge fight? It's gonna... no. Okay, so recently I started watching the show on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel, and it's super weird and like trippy, but it's really interesting. it's about like, well, all the audio comes from Duncan Trussell. I don't know if it's Trussell or Trussell. I haven't really watched the podcast, or I haven't really listened to the podcast before, you know, finding the show. But basically, it's the audio from the podcasts mixed with a couple new clips to make it conducive to like the actual show plot, and like basically you have this like, sometimes it's metaphysics, sometimes it's just like life talk, like in interview really. And there's also like this animation subplot going on with like these crazy characters in this psychedelic worlds. And in the meantime, it's so weird because it's like you're listening to a podcast while watching an animation, and for the most part the audio and the visuals don't really seem like they have anything to do with each other, but you know, it just makes for this really unique experience. Because I was blown away when I first started watching it, because I thought that the audio was all like written and recorded, and they just somehow, like the voice actors and the writers managed to capture that authentic feel of just two people chilling out in a recording booth having a conversation. Maybe not a recording booth. Ah, dang. R.I.P. Flawless right at the end. But yeah, it's cool. If you like philosophy and stuff like that, it's be a pretty interesting watch. And even if you just like psychedelic animation and stuff like that, I think it'd be a cool watch too. It's animated by it's like a co-creation between Duncan Trussell and Pendleton Ward, creator of Adventure Time. So it's got like a similar sort of like cartoony feel to that. Okay, so I did find something to talk about during that fight. That's cool. I hope that was entertaining, even if you're not interested in the show at all. Just like, you know, heading into the Silt Village, not much is different, of course. But that marks like the halfway point for the run, I think, which is nice to get here with little to no real challenge. And of course, I'm not gonna fight the guy in that enclosed area, so I'm gonna be drawing him out with the homunculus rune, getting him somewhere I can fight him more openly, and the cannonball's not just gonna bounce off the wall and give me. Or, the using like gib, or I guess jib, depending on how you feel about that. Whether gib is like its own thing separately, or it's a shortening giblet. Just like a little chunk of meat or whatever. I don't know. I'm just gonna not really finish that, I guess. Basically, if the cannonball bounced off the wall, it'd blow me up and it wouldn't feel good. Is where I'm going with that. Yeah, it really is hard to get used to the new like stat distribution. Not distribution, but like the low amount of stats that you get on these 1.9 runs. Because I'm so used to having like a good gauge in my head, being like, okay, I want to have like 20 in my main stat when heading into the concierge fight. If I'm lower than that, I should be careful and expect a longer fight. But here I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what's good anymore. How do the weapons scale? I only know that it's different. You didn't give me the numbers. That's the one thing that I would like to see different in the Dead Cells patch notes, giving me like the numbers and calculations so I can actually, I mean, I'm probably not going to sit down and do the math, but like I can do a little bit of mental math, get an idea of exactly how stuff changes and how big it is. Because if you just say like stuff's been buffed or stuff's been nerfed, like damage increased, damage decreased, cooldown, stuff like that, I mean, that's all well and good, but is it a decrease of like half a second, or is it a decrease of like 3 seconds? It really matters. So I have to, like, Well, I guess it does incentivize me to jump on the beta and try things out for myself. So, touche. Got me there, me. Completely destroyed my own argument, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a stats guy. I like having the numbers and stuff like that when I'm working on. Not even really. Well, I guess kind of working on, because I do put a decent amount of work into putting builds together. Also, got the 60 for the Stilt Village. Not an everyday occurrence given all the little biters around, and samurai crabs that always seem to get me when I'm least expecting it. So, hooray on that part. I lost my train of thought again, but that's fine. Now we're getting to the point where the blood explosion thing is really starting to pump out the DPS now that I've got some extra scrolls. 4 more to be precise. It's nice because, like, with this with the open wounds combo and also binding the throwing knives to the same hit, every time I click, and since the Bloodsword attacks in like a 2-part combo too, it's just every combo instantly procs that bleed because it applies 3 on hit. Because it's one from it's 1 stack of bleeding from Bloodsword, 1 stack of bleeding from open wounds, and 1 stack from the throwing knives. Really gets that burst out there, which is pretty nice for chunking through these levels super quick, or at least pretty quickly. And I do want to go to the Sepulcher, partially because, you know, I don't want the Cursed Chest for stats, but also if I remember correctly. Oh yeah, and sorry about my cursor appearing on screen every once in a while. I set my OBS to not capture my cursor, but like sometimes it just does it anyway when I tab out. So, I was tabbing out to check to make sure the recording's going because I was really happy with the way the build was going, and I wanted to make sure I could get the video out. Because I would have been, because even if it like stopped recording halfway through, I would have been able to, you know, just record like another first part of the run with a different commentary where I explain how the build works, or just make a shorter video that starts halfway through. I could just do that. Whatever. I would have thought of something. Oh yeah, I wanted to see how if they added any new dialogue to the spider, because she deserves some new dialogue or something. Been in the game for quite a while now. Underappreciated character who has literally no personality. Well, that's fine. I guess there might be a little personality somebody can glean from the very beginning, but could use more dialogue, because I like her design. She's got a very cool design. You could make for an interesting character if permitted, I guess. Oh yeah, where I was going with that. The at least back in 1.8, the slumbering, not slumbering, the clock tower and the Forgotten Sepulcher both had the same amount of scrolls that you could get. Maybe with different like fragment levels, but the fragments are not too incredibly important for the most part. So, yeah. But like that's even taking the Cursed Chest into account for the stat scrolls that you'd be getting in the area. There's the same amount in the clock tower, but I think maybe there's more power scrolls, so you're less likely to get off stats. Maybe, I don't really remember. I'll have to go back and check. I haven't checked back with the map in a while, because I haven't been playing Dead Cells in a while, actually. I started playing again for the, well, I started playing again because I got a comment for a viewer or I mean a viewer suggested run, which I talked about in the first alpha video, which is Alchemic Carbine in Voice Axe. I'm sorry it's gonna have to come out a little late. I really want to get this alpha content out though, and the amount of time that I could spend recording my voice is pretty, you know, it's pretty few and far between. And Rapier is dual scaling with Brutality Tactics now, which is pretty neat, kind of a long time coming. I've also heard arguments that it should be dual scaling with Brutality and Survival now that it has the shields, like the parry synergy. But I feel like it's more, I feel like the concept of a Rapier, which is like an agile sword that requires like rolling around and, you know, being maneuverable, is more fitting with tactics than it would with survival. That's just my thoughts on it. So I think that this change is fine. The one thing that's nice about weapons not having stats on them anymore is that I would always be a little annoyed whenever they made a weapon that I liked and would only use in Brutality, like they made it dual scaling with something like Tactics, because then it's just like, okay, well, sure, this opens up more build possibilities, but at the same time, why would I use this with something that's not Brutality? Now I'm just gonna not be able to get my free rerolls and not worry about the stats. So I do appreciate now that when an item or when something is dual scaling, that legit just means it's got more build options. It's an appreciated change, even if weapons not having stats on them has made the early game so much more difficult until they like mess with the numbers and fix it. But it'll do for now. It is also kind of an issue because, you know, now that there's so many two-handed crossbows, which is, you know, all the crossbows. Now that there's so many two-handed survival weapons that no longer scale with tactics, and conversely there are more tactics ones that no longer scale with survival, we've got this weird sort of, like, well, basically, the build options are limited in regards to survival and tactics, and like even more than they were previously, because there's so many like pure tactics things now. Which, you know, pure tactics stuff was a benefit back in 1.8, but here in this 1.9 with, you know, no stat scrolls, having stuff be single color has no benefit and just makes it more difficult to use in a fun way. I mean, it's just as easy to use like in its intended, maybe not intended, but in the way that you normally would, in the stat build that you normally would. But I don't know. I don't want to have to use Nerves of Steel and Marksman's Foe in a non-range survival run. In a non-survival run, because that was like the whole thing that made them fun, was that they were like slow and hefty, and you could take them with necromancy and stuff, and then you get all the fun of range without getting one shot. But I don't know. I don't know if I said this in the last video, but I feel like the changes they've been making recently have been pushing me farther and farther away from wanting to play tactics and survival and just keeping me like focused on brutality. Which, I mean, I love brutality. It's my favorite. It's so much fun. But I really want to be able to show off other builds and with other colors and not feel like everything is so much harder. But that's just my perspective on it. I get that I could also just, you know, take the time to really practice and grow accustomed to the changes, and then I could, you know, be able to play with it well in spite of them. But for now, I'm gonna complain. Because why not? Well, I mean, I shouldn't just, like, you know, I shouldn't just, like, complain for no reason. It's good to have, like, a valid reason to complain. Because if you're just complaining for no reason, then it's, like, actively seeking conflict instead of just being positive. But, yeah, whatever. So, yeah, I want to fight the giant. Of course, because it's a... I generally just prefer fighting the giant because I can get through the game much more quickly, not have to bother going through the castle. Though, at the same time, maybe the extra stat scrolls from the castle would be good, considering how stats are working right now. But also, it's such a high risk going to the castle, especially if you're not taking Masochist. And you have to, like... And if you want to have a good fight against the Timekeeper, sometimes, at least for me, because I like to have disengagement in boss fights like as a must, I'd have to re-roll my mutations. Although the mutations are cheaper in this update, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But basically, I want to like make the re-rolls as cheap as possible, and if I have to go like pure boss fight runes. Pure boss fight mutations, then switch to regular for the castle, then switch back for the hand, then switch back for the Astrolabe. It just feels like such a waste. And I think the giant fight is my favorite part of this video, because as you can see, he's not really liking the bleed changes. Or the bleed synergy. I think that fight lasted like 20 seconds before a skeleton died of blood loss somehow. But yeah, I heard from somewhere that the giant's health must have been like changed for the update, because he's kind of like made of tissue paper. I guess, because I only have 26 brutality right now, which I guess like at that point I want to have 30. But I guess if you think about it, like on average, you would be having like 4 to 6 stats from your regular, or you would be having like 4 to 6 stats if your items had weapons. Like you'd be having 4 to 6 in your main stat, so you would be at about 30, maybe even like 32, or something like that. So it kind of evens out, and then you get the added bonus of the rework to weapon scaling based off level. So overall, in an okay position. Oh yeah, if you haven't seen this, if you take a king outfit, either the white king outfit or the regular one into the hand fight, he has like his own dialogue for it. Sorry I skipped through it. I was just like jonesing to get going, not spend any more time. And yeah, as you can see by like the damage it's doing to the hand being like significantly less than it was to the giant, despite the fact that the build hasn't changed at all. I think it has to be something specific with the giant, you know, being less or having less health. Also, I didn't play this fight like even remotely close to like flawless or anything like that. I got hit quite a bit, but it doesn't really matter because I went out of my way to make sure that I was keeping that 25% damage reduction on Cleaver, which is actually one of the best mutation, or one of the best affixes you can get on a deployable, in my opinion. I get that like everybody's playstyles vary, and so their values are different, stuff like that. But I like having that damage reduction, especially on like a tactics run, but it works good on brutality too. See, I'm taking stacking up a lot of melees. Thankfully it doesn't really seem to matter because dead inside. And I've still got full potion charges, so you can just whip away like 7 or 8 of that at any given time. I don't remember exactly. I don't know if it rounds up or down when cutting like 50% of 15, Because, you know, if it rounds down, it would be removing 7 melees. If it rounds up, it'd be 8. I think it removes 50%. I don't know. I haven't really checked recently. But yeah, heading into the Astrolab, build's looking pretty solid. Same as always. I think we're in like a relatively good space for scrolls. Sitting pretty with like average after finding that cursed chest in the very beginning, the extra one. It's nice. HP is, well, since everything does like less damage, HP is fine, but 20,000 is normally going to be pretty low, I think. If you're working with Dead Inside, that is. Yeah. And there is a blood sword that's got more bleeding DPS than mine, so obviously I'm going to go for it. Because you got to get as much bleed as possible, especially because I'm like, if the hand fight took that long, I wonder how long the collector fight's going to take. Since the collector's patterns are easier, but he has like a lot more health than the hand, I'm pretty sure. It's kind of, not that great. I mean, yeah, I can say it. The collector fight's gonna be a freaking slog. It just takes forever. It's like, it's not that our DPS is terrible, it's just not the best, I guess. It's definitely a lot more than old blood sword could do, which I am appreciative of. Sorry, this is my cat. Using, or honking, kind of. He's got a weird meow. Or maybe that won't pick up on the mic. I don't know. But yeah, he's throwing a little temper tantrum, I guess. I never really know what to talk about in regards to like the Astrolab. Because it's just like it's just boring. And librarians are annoying. Okay, I'm gonna have to deal with them. So yeah, I like the changes to bleed and also the buff to blood sword. So blood sword is one of those things that it was unique, one of the most unique things you could unlock like right off the bat, because it's 100% drop chance from the first zombie you kill in the game. But then like the DPS just really starts to fall off as you get better weapons. You learn about like proper synergies and stuff like that to buff up your damage, and that doesn't buff up bleed damage. So it always felt like a not so great kind of weapon. But hey, it definitely feels a lot faster. Like there's a lot of, oh yeah, and even when dual wielding like this, you can still just kind of spam your melee weapon from a distance as long as your second hit is ranged. It'll just go through anyway. I hear him trying to math out if I get more health from the survival or the tactics. It's survival pretty easily because the not heading up too far in the stats. But yeah, just the fact that like you'd have to wait so long for even the most basic of enemies to bleed out, it's just really annoying. And yeah, I'm keeping the 25% resistance because that just like reduces any chance of me dying to the collector somehow. And I know I'm well aware that I shouldn't underestimate him or I'm gonna die, just like the tentacle episode, but there's a reason I underestimate him most of the time. And that's because it's accurate most of the time. I admit he is capable of ending my runs if I screw up though. But yeah, with the way bleed works now, you get so much more burst damage on a build like this with the blood sword. So it feels better. It really does. Because I much prefer fast-paced stuff over waiting for like damage over time to tick down. Damage over time isn't ever my main source of damage. It's just, I like to think of it as supporting damage that enables synergies. At least that's like how I like to use it. The only exception being Hokuto's and the Alchemic Carbine, because, well, damage over time when you're doing a ton of damage over time is still pretty good. It's basically the same as burst. Or it's like a nice happy medium, I guess. It's kind of a rough situation right there. Rolling directly into the big slam and then getting tapped by the little skull, so I couldn't rally up any of my health. Because, you know, if you get hit again while rallying up your health, or while your health is still orange, it resets the rally, which is pretty rough. Poison is an exception though, because it still counts as just getting hit once, and in that case, poison is actually great for rally, because the rally won't start ticking down until you've stopped taking the damage over time from it. It's pretty nice. Just chugging along through the Astrolab, same as always. I feel like this level is just so long. I mean, I get that it's long. It should be long, since it's like the penultimate challenge before fighting the Collector. But it's just such a pain every time, because you gotta find both the elites to get them down, to get the keys, to get through the or to get access to the tower. Then you gotta climb the tower, and you gotta fight the elites. But normally you can just tease them. And then you can't just like run around full speed throughout all the levels, because there's so many gaps in the floor that you could fall down and like completely destroy yourself, because at this stage in the game, the amount of damage you take from falling out of the world is so immense. I really would like to just be running through it like any other level, but does not feel like that'd be the right thing to do. But it's okay. It just leaves me with a lot of situations where I'm bored here, just wanting to get to the Collector fight and get it over with. Plus, also, if you run through, there's so many enemies like the librarians and the bombers that will like follow you. While they follow you and they go overhead, meaning you get into situations where you can't really do anything when they're above you, because they attack. Because if they attack out of sync from each other, then you're just kind of screwed. So if you run through the level, you aggro the bombers and the librarians, and then put yourself in a position where you probably won't be able to deal with them, and then you just get bonked for all your health because it's late game. It's rough. Thankfully, throwing knives can target directly above itself, letting you deal with them pretty quickly. And magic missiles doesn't apply bleeding, so no way I'm taking that. Because like I mostly just went with like the full bleed build as a meme, just because it's like, oh, they reworked bleeding, let's get all the bleeding now. But then it turned out to be not terrible. I still don't think it's amazing, just because like the DPS kind of falls off. But I don't know if that's because I just have low stats at this point in the game, or if, you know, the DPS is just not as high as it maybe should be. Or maybe not as high as it should be, but like as high as you would get with a different, like regular sort of setup. And I'm like semi trying to cheese the birds out here, but eh. Got one of them. And not to worry about the key being on the outside like that. That happens all the time. It's really easy, especially when you're working with a build like this, to just do like the sword hop up the wall, grab it, and just come back down. And I'm pretty sure even if it falls like past that ledge, there's always gonna be a platform or something off in that area, so it'll get caught down there too. So it's not even like a risky cheese. It's just an easier way to get through the level. Yeah, and at this point there's nothing really to reroll because you can't get bleed synergy on something that applies bleeding. Unless it's a legendary, then you have a chance to. So, and I already have bleed synergy on the lacerating aura, so there's really no reason to be re-rolling for more stuff. And also, like, what better mutations am I gonna take than the open wounds for the like core soul of the builds and the 2 defensive mutations that help most in boss fights. But yeah, it's with 29 HP of the collector fight, this is gonna be kind of a slog. It's not so bad early because, you know, because early on his health bar isn't that huge, but it'll pick up. And I'm not playing perfectly, of course. That's fine. Don't really have to. I mean, as is evident by the fact that I'm wearing the White King outfit, because I ported over my save file from 1.8. I've already beaten them flawless, so I don't have to do it again. I still usually go for it just for posterity's sake, but a lot of the times I'm just like, I just want to get the run over with. Not in the sense that like, oh man, I hate this build and I want to get it done with as fast as possible, but in the sense that it's like, this run's been going on for like an hour and I really want to make the video as short as possible to keep people's attention, you know? Plus, you know, if the video is shorter, then it takes less time to upload, and if it takes less time to upload, then I can give my computer a break so it's not chugging away always. Because I have to leave it on to render the videos, I have to leave it on to render the audio, render them together, and also gotta leave it on to upload every time, which is the real kicker because that takes like a full day to upload like one video. So my internet's not good. But yeah, like, actually this fight, I don't think it was as slow as I thought it was. Either that or I just zoned out and started talking about like meta commentary, I guess you could call it. The commentary about making videos in a video. I guess that counts as meta commentary. But yeah, that's the fight over with. So I like the new bleed changes. I don't think it's really worth going for like a full bleed build. Like it's not gonna do more DPS than getting like your like a weapon and then buffing it up with synergies. But it's fun. Also, we get to see the cutscene that happens if you win with the king outfit and the you know, Dead Cells guy regains his place on the throne. But yeah, thanks everybody so much for watching. If you have any suggestions for a run you want to see, whether it's like a showcase challenge or just some interesting build you've got in mind, leave it in the comments and I'll be sure to get to it eventually. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you didn't, some constructive criticism would be appreciated so I can improve and get better at this. See you in the next one.